This is part of the Agritech Leadership Development Program. Why is this important? Why today's theme is important? I've tried to put, if I look at Ali, for instance, who is driving now his company, raising funds, and I could use a number of other examples. These are the sort of competencies that we look for when we decide whether we fund or we don't fund a company. So one of the competency, I use Ali in this case, is does he have a strategic mind? Is he able to articulate the plan for his company? Is he able to articulate the vision for his company? And is he able to do it in a way that he can communicate it to all stakeholders, his people, investors? This is a very important element in terms of any investors. And this is one of the elements that we use in terms of deciding whether we take companies or not. The second one, which is critical, you could be a great dreamer, you could have wonderful visions, but at the same time, we're going to test him on his ability to execute on it. So a lot of the time is going to be spent on testing his execution capabilities. What are his milestones? Is he delivering on these milestones? Are these milestones realistic milestones? Are these milestones measurable milestones? So this is a second dimension which is fundamental. The third dimension, and we covered this during the previous workshop, does he understand the financial implications of the decision that he is taking? This is quite important because if you don't, you might be taking the wrong decisions and not realizing and destroying value in your company. So understanding this financial language is a critical element also in deciding whether this is the right company to support, is this the right company to fund. The fourth dimension is the sales and marketing dimension. Is Ali able, does he have the skill set to set up the right distribution channel? Does he have the right approach in terms of sales, in marketing? Is he able to build his brand? Is his brand sustainable? Can he differentiate versus others? This is a very important element in terms of sales, marketing, brand building. A fifth element that is a lot of time unforeseen and forgotten is the ability to assess risks, to manage risk, to be able to understand what will be the mitigation plan. Tomorrow he's presenting, his wife is presenting to the LWAF, which is a fund for women investors. And one of the slides that he has, and we work together on it, what can go wrong? What are the issues that could go wrong? And what is the contingency plan in case some of these issues go wrong? So the issue of assessing risk, understanding risk is quite critical. And a lot of people don't look at it. But as an investor, you would always ask the question. And if the person doesn't, we have no risk, or we have no, then immediately the person is being discredited in the eyes of a potential investor. The sixth dimension, which is equally important, is he able to build the team? Is he able to get the right talents, to understand what is his talent gaps, to write the right people on board, and is he able to create the culture that these people work together and learn together from it? This element is, you could be excellent in this, but if you're not a team builder, there is something fundamentally wrong in your company. So building teams, building high-performing teams is very important. I put here technical, each one of you is a specialist in your own domain. You know it, it could be a sector specialist, it could be technology specialist, it could be a product specialist. And this applies to every one of the companies. I've put here the asset allocator. If I look back to Ali, Ali will get funds. He received already funds from Speed. Hopefully he's going to get more fund tomorrow when he's presenting and pitching. He might, because of this, get another fund that will be matching it. How is he going to allocate his funds across the different initiatives that he has? This decision in terms of asset allocation is a critical decision. So is he investing in the right initiative? Is he investing in the right activities, yes or no? And this is important because if you get the money and you don't spend the money well, this money is gone. So this is more about your ability to assess investment opportunities, to prioritize these investment opportunities, and to be able to execute on these investment opportunities. Each one of those is a completely different language and a completely different skill set. The last one I've put here is a change champion. Industries model change. If you're here to wait for the change to happen, you might not be here in a year down the road or 2 years down the road. So the ability to understand that change is part of who you are as a company, as a leader, and to be able to adapt to this change and ensure that you have the right change management approach to this is very important. So if you look at it, it feels as if Ali needs to be 10 different people. The reality is that he has to be 10 different people. He might not be an expert in all these fields, but then what is important at the center of it, that he has the right governance, that if he doesn't have this expertise, to know where to draw this expertise to help him. So what I'm focusing today, what we are going to talk about, is the center of it. It's the governance. It only applies to Ali. It applies to his company. It applies to his sector. It applies to his country. So the principle of governance is a fundamental principle that sets the foundation of who you are as a leader, what do you want your company to be, what do you want your country to be. If this is not clear, if this is not transparent, if this is not something that you could communicate easily, you would have missed a big point out of it. Okay, so this is any questions on this or any bubbles that I have forgotten? I think you are very strong on the sales and marketing side. I think you have a sense, you understand customers, you put your place in customer side, you capture customer feedback, and I think this is quite important. On the operational side, you deliver. So you set the objectives, you have your project, you deliver on these objectives. I think you have started on the financial expertise. We've put together the budget, you revised the budget behind it. I think there is room to grow in terms of financial expertise. I think there is also a room to grow in terms of the strategy, understanding what's happening outside, being able to position yourself towards. I think these are areas of growth and development. I think in terms of risk, you're pretty good. You know what are the risks, and you know how to adapt to the risk. So inherent in you, there is an ability to be able to assess the risk and being able to. Team builder, I think this is a strong point. Your nature, your character, your empathy towards others is something that is going to be a technical specialist. You know your fields, you know it well, you spend your time, and you spend a lot of the time here. This is going to be, as we get the funds, and hopefully we'll get a lot of funds, Ali, over the next 2 years, it's the ability to be able to allocate these funds to the right. This is yet to be tested on this one. And in terms of change champion, this is also yet to be tested as we move towards different changes. Now, in terms of governance, you are in the process of thinking and deciding what is the right way, and we're going to cover it later on. So I think this is also an area for development. Is my assessment a fair assessment, Ali? Yes. Is there something that you will say differently, or? It's fine. Your wife is not here, so it's okay. The strategic one is going to be, I mean, today what we've done is we planned for Beirut, for instance. What we need to have in mind, in 5 years down the road, where would you be? I mean, today you're focusing on residential primarily. How big is going to be institutional? How big is going to be Dubai versus other countries in it? So it's the ability to be able to plan the future and to decide where are these growth drivers going to come from. We had started the discussion on it. It needs to continue. Yes?
When will you place innovation?
Okay, it's a very good point. Actually, innovation, I've put it, and I shouldn't. I should put it in separate one. It's an excellent point. I've put in some ways, and I will add it. Innovation is, and this is one thing, Raja, that you will find out. If they decide, when Stanford decide on which companies to fund, innovation is a critical one, i.e. is on the IP side.
You have it under change.
Okay, so you could change, you're right. You could we'll put it as innovation. So you have innovation. This is basically building. You know, the question that I keep asking each of the companies is what makes you unique? What is your IP? What is your intellectual property that you could defend and you could protect? So innovation, thank you for raising it, Fadi. Innovation, and it could be completely separate. In the case of Stanford, they put it separate. So they put innovation. There is another element that is missing. Which is the other element missing? Okay, it's embedded into governance. So I go back, Raja is my cousin, he'll be doing, he's going to West Africa to be the coach of separate companies. They look at innovation. They look at the ability of the leader to be really a team builder and a number of this. But there is a third element which is critical to West and East Africa, but also very critical to Lebanon. What do you think it is? I mean, you have one which is social corporate responsibility that you could have. The other element is what? What is today our major problem that we have? No, go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Exactly.
What is it?
It's compliance with laws, regulations, and not slipping into the corrupt.
Exactly. So it's basically about integrity. It's about integrity, it's about compliance, and it's part of the government side. For me, creating sustainable value is all this. So value creation, to you to create value, being it shareholder value, being it social value, it's the overall umbrella. So you're absolutely right, because if we're not creating value, we have an issue. So. Oh, you didn't see the top, so now we have. So these are the difference. Any other questions on it? Yes, Lina.
Key things at arm's length, avoid conflict of interest, especially when you have family
Yes, this is a very good one. It's different from ethics. This is basically separating, and you will see this. I've circulated an article written by a close friend of mine, family and business. So family and business separation. And it will be covered between the two, because a number of the times, and I mean, I lived in Dubai for several years. One of the companies was Damak. Damak is a company, you might have heard of it. They went public. They had a full, they're listed on the stock exchange. The family owner was always used to withdraw whatever money he wanted from the company at any time. So he withdrew about $170 million from the accounts under his personal money. This is his company. He is the major shareholder, but he has other shareholders that came in. This is completely different between family governance and corporate governance. And this separation between the two could be a wake-up call for a number of family leaders who are today in the process of transferring their company from a family business to a corporate business. So the separation or the segregation between family and business is quite important. And this hits a number of companies in Lebanon and across the region, as most of them are family related. Okay, good. So this is, why did I put this? Because we're going to focus on the one in the middle. Now we're going to do it in we have 3 hours ahead of us. We're going to do it in 4 separate parts. The first part is I'm going to have your questions. So what are the questions that you want answered into, and I do this across each of my presentation. We're going to list your questions, and at the end of the day, you're spending 3 hours here. I want to make sure that these 3 hours are well spent. So what are the questions that you have? And I'll list them, and I will try to address all of them. So this is the first part. I will add to your questions my questions, what I feel that are important and I would like to address. This is the first bucket. The second bucket is I will take you through what I call academia and templates. So what is it that we do across these? What are the minimum knowledge that you need to know in order to set up your company? So this is what I call the academia / templates / best practices that we have. So this is the second. The third template is I ask a number of people who have been sitting on boards. These are founders of companies. These are owners of companies. And what were the good experiences in dealing with board? What were the bad experiences in dealing with board? So you're going to hear it from others, not only from Constantin, but from other people. I've asked Rami to do it. I've asked Raja to do it, both Raja and I've asked Samer to do. So you have a number of people that will come and that will give their pitch. And I think it's important that you hear. And we will see from their presentation that there are common themes that come in terms of why our board needed, why is governance important, and what can go wrong in terms of poor governance. So this is also a good learning. And the last portion that we will do is I will share with you real experiences that I went through with a number of different Stanford Seed and other companies over the past number of years. So this is real cases that we have. So you will have your questions. We'll try to answer it through academia. We'll move into trying to look at the experience and the exposure of others, and I will wrap up by sharing with you a number of the implementation that we have done. So I will take a real board pack. I'll show you how it is structured. I'll go it from one company to the other company that you do, so you get a feel. Now, all these are available. All the slides, you will have all these information. Now, the one that are sensitive to the company, I will not share, but the one like the presentation, I have no problem in sharing. And at the end of the day, what's important is for instance, when I sit down with Ali, he has taken it, then I work with him, and this is the whole coaching process to implement these, to complete these templates. This is what Raja will be doing with his company in Accra, in Abidjan, and in Lagos, and this is where a number Raja does also with his companies, what Samers does also with these companies, is to be able to take these templates and apply them to these different companies and adapting them to their own needs. Best jurisdiction, legal setup for scaling companies. Okay, for scaling companies. This is good. And now actually I will share, because we have a number of different setups, and then we'll go. Okay, so this is one question, is what is the best or the right jurisdiction or legal setup that you need as a company to ensure that from a tax perspective, from a shareholder perspective, from a customer perspective, this makes sense. So this is an important question. What else?
From a VC perspective.
I'm sorry?
Also from a VC perspective.
From a VC perspective. So this is so from
the jurisdiction has to be linked to the perception of the country versus the Series C and D that are usually done in the States.
In the States.
You know what I mean.
What makes sense for a Series A or Series B might not make sense for a Series C or D. No problem. What else?
How to set up a board.
Okay, so there are basic questions. So basically is how how do you set up a board? Okay, underneath this question that you have a number of questions. It's like, what should be the type of board members you need to have? And it will vary across each one of you. So I'm sorry? Yes, so what you do is here is basically the composition of your board. It's not only how to set up, the composition of your board is quite important. How do you go about deciding is this? So the composition, then you have the hiring of this. Then you have the whole compensation of board members. If you want them to add value, how are you going to compensate them? Then what you do related to this, you have the board charter. The board charter specifies black and white in terms of what are the board role and responsibilities, what are the responsibilities of the chairman. So board charter is quite important, and these would all be templates that you will receive. So you'll have examples of what these are across this. So what else do you need?
I wanted to ask you who draws those board charters.
Okay, this will be under the board charter. So what you do, and we'll respond to it when we get to this. Okay, so board charter, what else?
Legalities in a country like Lebanon, for example. I don't know if this is the subject of the discussion.
It is not today. It is, but in terms of what needs to be, okay. What we have is the board charter. So what you have is legalities in Lebanon. Legalities in Lebanon. Okay.
Incentive structure.
Okay. So what you do, you have here hiring. You have, but I will put on it is boards. So boards remuneration / incentives. What else?
And structure.
Okay, the structure. So what you need to do is your governance. What should be the right governance structure? And you will see that it would vary from one company to other. I'll show you two examples for a small company and for a larger company. Governance structure. Okay, this is important. What else?
From a financial standpoint, a lot of B2C Lebanese companies have two sets of books.
Yes.
An official book and an unofficial book.
Yes.
Now, when you get a PwC or whomever, you're only showing them the official book.
Yes.
When you want to get acquired,
yes.
you want to show the full picture.
Yes.
You want to brag about the full picture.
Yes.
So how do you move from a structured, a PwC audited set of books that doesn't give the full picture to the full picture without raising the alarm bells?
Okay, this is a very important point. It's a very important, if you didn't get it, basically a number of companies are providing their financial statement with a very minimal profit, if any, on it, where the true profit is significantly higher. And when an investor comes in, they show the true profits. When the tax people come in, they show the other one. So the reality is the duality between legal books and real books, I will put, and then how do you bridge the gap? And bridging gap. So I'll be very frank. I mean, for instance, at Stanford, very clear. If a company has two sets of books, we don't work with them. So the answer is very clear. We don't want. If you don't, I had a situation where in Senegal, where a company was extremely profitable, and they were not declaring it. And I said, look, I have an issue as a coach, and you will be faced with a similar situation. So this is, but we will address it. We'll address it. But from there is, I have a good friend who say, look, there is the right and wrong, and it's very clear. There is no misunderstanding. Gray areas do not happen. So if you are stepping away, you're stepping away. And this applies to relationship, it applies to businesses, and it applies to countries. So, and in the case of how we go about selecting it, it's a no-no. So there is, you stop and you back up. Okay, Kivak. Okay, any other questions? So this is an important one because we are face it and you will be facing it as you start generating profit. Any other questions? جاد عم بسألهم شو السؤالات اللي بدهم answers to. In terms of shareholders? Okay, so okay, so what I'm going to say is it's dilution of founders shares as we go through several equity rounds. I take the example of Ali. Ali, when he came to Speed, he got a certain amount of money. So this amount of money put his valuation and against a certain number of shares. So his valuation was set. When he's applying 6 months later to another round, which will be tomorrow, they will come up with a different valuation, which is higher than the initial valuation. His shares are going to be systematically reduced and diluted. So how do we go about ensuring that we as investors want to have Ali completely motivated, and how do we ensure that if we dilute him too much, he won't be, and we want him to be the owner. So how do you draw this balance between empowering Ali in terms of the share that he has, and at the same time raising the funds that we need in order to make the transformation? It's a difficult question. We'll try to address it.
But there any ways when I can protect this?
Okay, so this is, so you have dilution of founders at several shares and protection. So what are the protection methods? Okay. All right, any others? Yes, Fadi.
How do you manage to get separation between governance and management?
Okay.
In the usual, especially when the CEO is
Yes.
the major.
Yes.
shareholder.
Okay. This is a fundamental. Also, another fundamental is the separation between, if you want, the shareholders that are on one side, and the other one is the management team. So how do you go, and this is very important, and you have to draw, and I'll show you real case examples. This is a big issue in terms of who is accountable for what, from a board perspective versus a management perspective, from a shareholder perspective versus family perspective. So you need to clarify the same way you have governance in a company, you will have also governance in terms of a family. So drawing this governance foundation for families, shareholders, and the management team is quite important. And it's a source of a lot of conflict and a lot of separation that we have. What else?
So I'm not sure if this point addresses mine, but in the US, as part of best practices of corporate governance, you want the chairman of the board not to be the chief executive, whereas over here, by law, they are the one and the same.
Yes.
So when you bring in external investors,
Yes.
they see it as a red
Yes.
flag, but in reality, it's local laws.
Yes.
We've inherited this from the
True.
French law.
Yes.
So how do we address
Okay,
that?
so it's I would put it in here, but I will address the issue, which I think is a very German versus, it's changing, by the way, Samer. For instance, one of the reasons I was the CEO of Al Ghurair, when Abdelaziz hired me, he said, Constantin, look, he was the chairman and he was the CEO of the entire group. He said, I needed to have this separation. This is quite important for me. And on top of this, I'm not able to fire myself, so I want to make sure that I could fire the CEO. So, but his issue was to make sure that you have the separation, chairman versus CEO, and this is primarily, you will see it in family businesses that you have. So how do we deal with this? Yes?
It's not by law, by the way.
It's not by law. It's not by law. Okay, so but we'll address it. Even if it's not by law, you will see it de facto. For instance, I know in your case, your chairman is not yourself. So you had separated the two, and you had a chairman, which was, but I think it's a very good question to have. Any other questions? It's a good list, by the way. What I propose we're going to do is I will go through what I call the basic elements that we need, and then I'm going to focus on the question, if this is okay. So I'm going to start with the basic points. So if you have no more, the first question, maybe I'll go. I always start my presentations for those who have been here with the same slide. And you will see that this slide makes a lot of sense even in this particular case. So the slide is, okay. It's the slides being it the individual or being in the company, and where are you trying to get to? Where you're going to get to, so at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. The wind speed, the height of the waves might be important, but the most important thing for you to know is where you're heading. The clearer is where you're heading, the easier it is going to be for you to be able to get there. And in some ways, you have to ensure that you are living it in your head. What is the one thing that you want to do, and what is this thing? And this actually drives you in terms of your day-to-day steps. So now, why is governance helping? Because governance is providing you the insurance in order to ensure that you could go there in a safe and fast way to do it. So the stronger, hi Ziad, how are you? Red, can you grab a chair from next, okay? And well, 2 chairs, so you have, okay, so how, the stronger is your governance foundation, the easier it is for you to be able to address these waves and to be able to reach the points that you have. And it's so much that investors, when they look at a company with the same financial results, I take Ali's company or I could take Ziad's company, they will take this company, they will look at his financials, they would look at his growth potential. If Ziad has a competitor with exactly the similar financials, the similar competition, the similar business model, they will give a premium on how well Ziad has put together his governance foundation. And this premium could be as high as 25%. So let's say the value of a company is $10 million. I'm willing to pay 25% more if this foundation is in place. If we have the right boards, if we have the right decisions taking at this road, if we have the right delegation of authorities between the board and between the management. So the more you have implemented the right systems, the right process, you as a company, even though you have exactly the same financial results as another company, I will give you a premium because of your governance. So the governance has a sweetener that allows you to get a much higher valuation. Okay? So in this case, where are you heading? Now, I could use, and I would encourage you to picture it. I would like to see in each one of you have a certain picture. If I ask Ziad, for instance, what is this picture of where he wants to get? Ziad, where do you want to get in 20 years down the road?
20 years. I think 35.
Oh, 5 years. So.
I want to exit in a multi-million-dollar exit. That's what I focus on.
So you want to exit? What would you do with the money?
I'm going to invest it in startups.
So you invest it. So what you want to do is you want to be basically set up your own fund and invest in startup with the money that you have. So his dream here is to be able to get this. So for this, he wants to make sure he could get as high a valuation as possible. Now, if you ask, and I'll ask each one of you, and each one of you would have an answer to it. In my case, the answer is a bit different, but in some ways similar to what Ziad found. This is a picture taken about 2 days ago. So this is taken, if you know the place, it's in the Kadisha Valley. So it's in a place called Hawa. You have the valley of the Kadisha. It's the Holy Valley. Forget if it's a cross. It could be a crescent. It doesn't matter. What you have in here is you basically have, which I personally believe is my destiny, is the ability to be able to, because there is a monk behind this cross. This monk is the only monk in Lebanon. His name is Dario Escobar. Some of you might have met him. Now, what Dario is doing is basically he prays and he cultivates his garden, but at the same time, he also welcomes people that come and he listens to them and be able to help them in whatever decision he has to make in his life. So I try to do a parallel between what Dario is doing and trying to do a similar sort of things with actually companies like yourself and with other companies in Africa and others. So this, in some ways, this olive tree and this cross, but it could be any sign here, because what you do is you align your core competencies, which is Dario's case, his core competencies is to listen, and of course he prays a lot. Align this with your spirituality, whatever is your spirituality, and most important thing is to put it to the service of the community. If you do all these three, in my mind, it's like my lighthouse. So what I would encourage you to ask each one of you is, what is this picture? So if I ask Rami, if I ask Raja, what is this picture? Because the clearer is this picture in your head, the easier it is going to be for you to set up the right governance structure that will allow you. Is this clear? So Lina, what is your... You don't want to answer? Okay, so I'm putting people on the spot. Some people... Raja, tu as une réponse ou pas?
Where you want to go?
Where you want to go?
For the startups that I help, I all want them to scale. So they have to be able to cover the whole MENA region. They have to be present in most of the MENA countries, and they have to make it big.
Yes. Okay, so it's about scaling, about creating value to the companies that you are helping and you're coaching. Very good. So I think it's important for each one of you to draw it. Do it at a personal level and do it at the company level. The clearer it is, and then you get validation behind it. This hike, by the way, is a pretty good height because you go down the Koshaya Valley, you go up the valley of Annubin. So this is the Kadisha Valley. You go up to Marlisha, and from Marlisha you go down to Annubin. From Annubin you go down to Hawa. From Hawa you go up the way. It's a pretty steep one. And then you do this journey by itself is a journey of about 7 hours. But in some ways it's like our own life's journey because you are in the middle of nature. There's absolutely nobody else. It's just yourself. You have all this spiritual dimension behind it, and you are extending yourself because at some times you feel that this is beyond your own means. And this is for me what life is all about. It's about this journey of being able to do the things that you enjoy, do it under some strong spiritual dimension, and is in some ways extending yourself to be able to hopefully help others. Okay, so I'll move in. Okay, so what are the questions that I have asked beside the question? What is good or bad governance? So what do you define governance? This is an important question, and I would like us to be able to answer it. The second one is what are the benefits? Why bother? Why bother to have a board of directors? Why bother to have the third question is what can you expect from a performing board? So what are the dimensions of success for a board? How do you ensure that you have an effective board? How do you know whether this is the best board you could get? And how do you make sure that you make your board members sweat for what they have to do? So how do you ensure how best to source, recruit, and compensate? You had it, board of directors, advisors. What are the responsibilities of a board? I'm sorry, yes, no. The responsibilities, and what are the duties of a director?